Welcome back to the Pete Murray Show. My guest on this afternoon's programme is Stephen Kendall Lane, who's here telling us strange stories of the unexplained. And the question I put to you, have you ever heard of a similar bizarre tale? Perhaps you've even been involved in one. The number to ring is 819-8111. We go straight to a caller. It's David of St Albans who'd like to put a question to you. Good afternoon, David.
Good afternoon, Pete. I'd like to make a couple of points about the Philadelphia experiment. First of all, Stephen mentioned the green mist, which seems to have cropped up in several different stories. And was it possibly a coincidence that this green mist came up while they were doing the experiment and caused the disappearance? And also, if they were doing these experiments, why have they not continued to do these experiments since the Second World War? Because people aren't usually put off by one setback, such as something going wrong. They still want to try and find out what went wrong to make it work properly.
Well, I can't answer that really any more than anybody else can. If they are doing it, then they're keeping it very quiet. I think it doesn't work, or certainly the Philadelphia experiment didn't work. Primarily, I suppose, because so many people died. If you are going to try to make something invisible, I agree it could be very, very useful. There may be other reasons why this isn't possible. I mean, all I can do is tell you, as indeed long before me, Charles Baritz told the world. He investigated this thing, and allegedly it happened. The green mist, well, this is the point I'm making, that on various different occasions, as way back in 1932, with Admiral Byrd, he talked about a green mist. I don't know. It's the unexplained. I cannot explain it. But your point is well made, that it would be very useful if one could make something completely invisible. Certainly, if the Americans or anybody else did succeed in doing it, I don't suppose they would tell us they've done it anyway.
No, I don't suppose they will for a moment. David, thank you for your call. We go to Al of Sydenham. Good afternoon, Al.
Hello.
Hello, Al.
Hello, Stephen. Yeah, I'm a little surprised that you've quoted Mr. Berlitz. I thought it was well acknowledged that Mr. Berlitz is the sort of man who gives genuine researchers a bad name. I have read a couple of his books years ago, and really he doesn't apply any sensibility. He starts talking about time warps and things like that, instead of applying what scientists call the principle of Occam's razor. You're familiar with that, I presume?
Will you explain to everybody what Occam's razor is?
Well, basically you choose the simplest solution, and you carry on choosing the simplest solution and discarding those until eventually you reach one. And as soon as you find the first plausible explanation, you stop at it. I mean, you quote the book.
But he doesn't, does he?
Bermuda Triangle.
Yeah, but I mean, nobody has given a plausible explanation. This is the whole point. I mean,
have you read the research of Mr. Lawrence David Cush?
What does he have to say?
Well, he's somebody who's actually done original research on the triangle, and he's come to the conclusion that the triangle doesn't actually exist. That many of these stories have been handed down, misquoted. One guy who disappeared, allegedly in a triangle, turned up a couple of weeks later playing golf in Florida. It said that a lot of wreckage wasn't found. Wreckage has been found for many things. And when stochastic methods have been applied, it's found that no more ships have actually disappeared in this rather vague area, which can stretch for several thousand miles, and other places.
I take you back to the point that I made, that one can only talk about what people have said happened to them. And people are going to get ridiculed if they're going to make something up.
Yes.
I mean, we take this guy, Captain Henry, that I was talking about. Why would a retired naval captain, a man who was held in a certain amount of esteem in the local community, why would he come back from towing this barge across an area of the Bermuda Triangle and effectively
Well, you-
invite people to ridicule
You
him.
say the Bermuda Triangle, but it's a very vague area.
That's
I
absolutely
mean,
right.
Why would he say that? Well, lots of reasons. I mean, you're assuming that responsible, intelligent people don't play jokes and tell lies. Piltdown Man was a practical joke by a very eminent person. Then, added to that, you've got the fact that these are all subjective.
Piltdown Man, he was trying to make a point.
Well, no, I mean, these are all subjective impressions. When you subject these to scientific scrutiny, they just don't stand up.
This is the you're falling into the trap.
No, it's not a trap.
Yes,
It's
it is, because
scientific
what you're saying, Al, it's very simple to say, look, you can explain away this, you can explain away the other. It's the points, it's those, if you like, happenings that you can't explain away. Out of every 100 reports of UFOs, probably 90% can be explained away because people think, that must be a UFO, I shall report it. The fact, it's the ones that cannot be explained away.
Well,
it's the same with the Bermuda Triangle. Whenever a ship disappears or sinks or what have you, then yes, people are going to say, that was in the Bermuda Triangle, therefore something strange has happened. And I take your point, and I agree with you entirely, that there are quite a lot that actually,
but
can be explained.
Just because we cannot explain them doesn't mean there's time warps or anything like that. People disappear even in London every day, but that doesn't mean they've been kidnapped by aliens.
Yes, I know, but you can...
Charles Berlitz would probably say that about that girl who disappeared. What was Suzanne, the estate agents?
That's stupid, because that
would be Charles Berlitz's so-called theory that she'd been kidnapped by Martians and taken to another planet.
No, if you've got somebody who is saying, and in fact, perhaps more than one person, a lot of people, they're saying they saw this aircraft with 200 people on board, a military aircraft disappear. Well, there are experiences. There was a whole regiment disappeared in the First World War.
Well, that is nonsense as well.
What?
If you do the original research, though, I think you will find that read Mr. Cush's book on the triangle to start with, and then you will revise what you think.
You see, you're taking one author's
this is
research.
somebody who's done original research. Somebody who's not going around Chinese whisper style, quoting this, that, and the other. And Charles Berlitz has no more credibility than the Aetherius Society.
Look, all I'm doing is reporting what people have said, and I'm not nearly as frightened of the subject as obviously you are. Otherwise, you wouldn't.
No,
I'm not
yes, frightened. I'm not frightened.
You've got to open your mind, broaden your mind a bit, Al, and try to accept the fact that not everything has to be black and white. That there may well be things that we cannot explain, and if you are prepared to accept that, then you're going to get so much more out of things, because then you can go beyond that point where everything has to be black and white, and you can say, well, I admit that this is strange, that there shouldn't be, let us say, a parallel dimension, but if there was, could what's happened fit into that category? Yes, so therefore it's a possibility, and that's what people who are prepared to write about these things and investigate them as far as they're able, those are the conclusions they draw. They don't say this definitely happened. What people are saying is this is what might have happened.
Thank you very much indeed for your call, Al. And as far as the Aetherius Society is concerned, I'm told on very good authority they do have credibility. Thank you very much indeed for your call. Back in.
Many of them. They did recognize the picture of the pterodactyl and pointed avidly at the swamplands and said, yes, they lived there. They lived there. And, I find it quite amazing that prehistoric creatures could still exist on the Earth today, but in fact, in 1938, a coelacanth was pulled out of the sea off the African coast. A coelacanth.
That's a fish.
It's a slightly prehistoric fish, that we thought had been extinct for 70 million years, just like we thought the pterodactyl had been extinct for 65 million years. But the coelacanth is there. There are photographs of it. In fact, there was another one yanked out in 1952. It was caught actually on the end of a fishing line off the Comoro Islands, which is off the coast of East Africa. So we now know that the coelacanth actually did survive whatever it was that made prehistoric creatures extinct, and for 60, 70 million years in the depths of the ocean that the coelacanth has existed. So who is to say that the pterodactyls in the completely impenetrable swamplands of Central Africa don't exist also? I mean, and funnily enough, there are reports of other prehistoric creatures. In fact, the Brontosaurus. I mean, there's claims that the pygmies claim that there are huge, great swamp-like creatures that live in the swamps that are apparently 50 feet long with a long tail and a serpent-like head, and they say it's as tall as 10 men. Well, even 10 pygmies is very, very tall.
Sure.
And they call the creature the Namala, and it may well be the Brontosaurus, or in fact, or a plesiosaur. Again, that might lay some credence to the Loch Ness Monster. I mean, there are people that say they've seen the Loch Ness Monster. I mean, whether or not, it hasn't been proved, but there were some quite remarkable photographs taken, I think, by Speeder Scott, and that seemed to show the fin of the leg of what appeared to be a plesiosaur. I mean, why we automatically assume that every prehistoric creature no longer exists? I mean, the crocodiles have come down. And as I say, the coelacanth. So I think that there may well be some very, very big shocks for people when we do fully discover our Earth, which we haven't done yet.
Well, something that was very definite and isn't a figment of what some people might say is imagination is the mammoth, isn't it?
The mammoth, actually, again, the mammoth. About 200 years ago, there were some frozen mammoths discovered in Siberia. And what was interesting about the mammoths, because, I mean, we have found deep frozen humans in sort of the tundra regions and things. But, I mean, what was amazing about the deep frozen mammoths was that when they thawed out, they were edible. The meat was fresh, which means that they must have been deep frozen within seconds. Within seconds. I mean, now, well, you say how long? In their mouths, that there were buttercups. That if the mammoths were found frozen standing up, they had in their mouths buttercups and grass, which would indicate that they were in the middle of a meal in a warm climate. So what we're talking about are creatures that died instantly, frozen to death, in a warm climate that had buttercups. I mean, it is impossible. It would be, I mean, it is beyond our comprehension, and yet there are possible explanations. I mean, one theory that has been put forward is that for the temperature to drop instantly, I mean, we're talking about a drop of maybe 150 degrees in a matter of seconds. For that to happen, what a feasible solution would be that there was a huge volcanic explosion, eruption somewhere to the south. I mean, probably in the oceans, because we don't know of any such huge explosion on land. But let us assume that an island exploded in an eruption, and that the gases, the lava, the white-hot lava shot out into space, as indeed such an explosion would do. That lava would hit the cold of outer space with such force that it would turn to ice. Now, if that ice then spiraled down to Earth and went into the tundra region of Siberia, the moment it hit the Earth's atmosphere, it would freeze the atmosphere, and in fact the breath would actually freeze in the lungs of the mammoths, and that's why they died so instantly and collapsed to the ground. Now, it is a theory, and because we know that the tundra region was of a warm climate about 11,000 years ago, one has to say, but, you know, could such a thing have happened? Could there have been such an explosion? Could there have been such a tremendous catastrophe? Well, I must remind you that the legend has it that 10,000 years ago, the legendary island of Atlantis was supposed to have disappeared. And indeed, for an island to disappear such as Atlantis, then it would need an explosion of that sort. So possibly that the instant death of the mammoths, which is a fact, could well be some clue to solving the legendary catastrophe of Atlantis, which in fact it might be a reality. I mean, after all, Plato wrote about it 2,000 years ago, and that's interesting in itself. I mean, he talked about Atlantis, and we say, oh yes, okay, well that's probably legends, you know thought up, and he's just writing down fairy stories of the time. But he said that Atlantis was beyond the Pillars of Hercules, which is the Straits of Gibraltar, in an ocean, which would mean it would be the Atlantic. And what Plato also said was that that Atlantis was in an ocean, and at the end of that ocean was a vast great land. Now, we now know that if it was at the Atlantic that he was talking about, the other side was indeed America, but it certainly wasn't discovered 2,000 years ago. So again, very, very strange things. And keeping on the subject of Atlantis, if I'm not going on too much, if I'm not boring you.
No, not at all.
There is that further little clue. There was this Dutchman called Cornelius Linden. Now, he inherited a map that his family had for generations. It was more actually a document, but there was a sort of scribblings on it. But it was in a dialect that he didn't understand, and it turned out that it was actually an ancient Frisian dialogue that was near extinct, and he translated this document, and it was the history of the Frisian Islanders. Now, they claim that they were the remnants of a race of people that lived on an island called Atland, and that Atland was lost in a night of catastrophe and sank into the ocean. Now, the strange thing about that is that yes, of course, Atland and Atlantis are very similar. But, I mean, you're talking about charts or manuscripts that were written many hundreds of years ago, thousands of years ago.
Fascinating.
And Atland was supposed to be actually off the northwest of Britain, but something happened, possibly, I think.
Right, I think we've got time for a call from Nick of Heathrow. Hello, Nick.
Yeah, an afternoon to you.
Hello, Nick.
It's been a while since the last caller, but I think he had a lot of valuable points that he made. It's very easy to prove or disprove anything by plucking odd facts, odd accounts from here and there, and inventing solutions that may or may not fit. It's very easy to use what has been called pseudoscience to back these things up, but when you actually scrutinise them, as has been done, in all cases, it turns out that it's absolute nonsense.
What all cases are we talking about?
Well, in pretty well all cases where anyone has bothered to investigate properly, yes, there are things that are unexplained, but that's no reason for inventing stories with no basis whatsoever to explain them. I mean,
I absolutely agree with you. What are we talking about? What stories have been invented?
I mean, here's a question for you. Do you believe in fairies at the bottom of the garden? Because it sounds as if you would.
No. Why would you think I would?
Well, unfortunately, we have somebody that doesn't want to continue the conversation. And it's a pity, because there were points there that were reasonably valid, and he didn't actually keep on with it and give you a chance to answer, did he?
No,
So
no.
what we have really, I think, to sum up, you have said they are unexplained.
That's right. Absolutely right. And this is the whole point.
That is the whole point, and nobody, to our satisfaction, whether it be a scientist or otherwise, has in fact explained them.
That's absolutely. This is
properly.
the whole point. There are many things that happened in the world that there is no explanation for.
Stephen Kendall Lane, thank you for a fascinating hour.